Hello, everyone. This is Simaya Kar. You're now watching IEEE Turkey Women in Engineering Affinity Group's ET Talk. Today, we have a wonderful guest. We're going to talk about making decisions based on industry ecosystem. And we have Paige with us, Paige Kesselin, an IEEE member, and also she has a lot of experience from the field that we're going to talk about, the autonomous vehicles, smart cities, and solar impulse, and many more things to talk. I would like to introduce you, Paige. Actually, I would like to ask Paige to introduce yourself. We would like to hear you.
Yeah, so hi everybody. My name is Paige Kesselin and I am from Pennsylvania in the United States. So about 5 years ago, I was just graduating with my degree in electrical engineering, and I still remember that I thought, okay, college was a great experience and now I'll just probably have a normal career. And that's really kind of the last thing that happened. I've had a lot of great opportunities. I started my career working with a material science company called Covestro LLC. And the first assignment really that I had with that organization was helping the world's first solar powered airplane fly around the world. You know, something that not a lot of people say is their first job, but I got to apply my electrical engineering skills there, and then was able to expand and kind of break into the autonomous vehicle industry, and then also the smart cities landscape.
Well, sounds wonderful. And I would like to ask you, as IEEE volunteer, how did you get involved in IEEE, and how did you decide to be an engineer?
Yeah, so it's crazy because I've been involved with IEEE for almost 10 years now. And I remember I studied electrical engineering at Virginia Tech, which is a university in Virginia in the United States. And I remember just wanting to be involved in things related to my degree. So I saw IEEE and I knew that they needed people to step up and be officers. So I quickly jumped on board, and then the next year became president. And again, just like I said, when I graduated, I thought college was a great experience. IEEE was a great part of that. And I didn't realize how much throughout these next 5 years of my life, I would really pull upon this IEEE family that I've now built. So, you know, Simai, being able to talk to you and just everybody around the world, it's been a great experience. And it's interesting to see how much IEEE kind of weaves in and out of different aspects of what I've been doing with my career. And I really think, kind of to your second question about engineering and why I decided to pursue it, I always loved to be creative and use creativity to solve problems. So I loved that out of the box problem solving and trying to figure out a different way to solve problems. And engineering gave me more tools in my toolkit to solve bigger and more exciting problems. So I wasn't only, I guess, using paper and like construction paper, rubber bands, all of these things to build some, projects. I was able to use resistors and different electrical components to make a light bulb light up. And I just remember that feeling of feeling so powerful when you were able to accomplish these engineering tasks. So it was something that I just felt like I was passionate about. And I was happy that there was a degree that fits so well with what I was interested in.
And isn't it amazing that how connected we are all around the world? We are a big family, how we are connected, and we're like working in the very similar fields. Like even you're just like making friends from anywhere in the world, and like in different years you're connected again. So I'm very glad we're connecting thanks to IEEE.
I know, me too.
And we have so many interesting and very exciting topics to discuss today. So would you like to give a brief introduction about the topic, general topic, and then we will move on each of them one by one?
Mhm. Yeah, so today I want to talk about industry ecosystems and making decisions when taking into consideration all of the different factors of these industry ecosystems. And to highlight these points, I'll talk about my experience working with Solar Impulse, working in the autonomous vehicle industry, and also smart cities. And to kick this off, I have a definition of just what an ecosystem is. So an ecosystem is a biological community of interacting organisms and their physical environment. So, you know, as scientists, we hear this term ecosystem a lot. And an industry ecosystem then is a network of organizations throughout the entire value chain that include different things like suppliers or distributors, customers, competitors, government agencies, a lot of these different things to bring together a product or a service. So just like ecosystems in the wild don't interact in a silo, neither do industry ecosystems. So many value chains will overlap. So to create something like a value chain for solar panels does have some overlap with the value chain for the aviation industry. And really that's what I'll be getting into a bit with my work with Solar Impulse. But the reason I really want to talk about this today, though, is because as engineers, we're taught to solve problems. And as strong problem solvers, we know that we can never look at a problem just from one angle. So one thing I noticed, though, throughout my short career is that sometimes we're just so focused on the details and we can forget about the bigger picture of what we're doing and how it plays into the ecosystem of the industry we're in. So in order to not lose sight of that bigger picture, which could then potentially lead to blind spots that would then hinder business growth, it's important to remember that when you're making decisions in a corporate setting, you also have to make sure that you're evaluating these industry ecosystems and testing your hypothesis rather than just assuming something is not possible.
Well, already sounds very interesting. So, and you said Solar Impulse. Actually, you know, like I'm also a renewable energy professional. By knowing your story, you know, you have such a unique experience. You know, like for many of us who's really passionate about this clean tech, and you know, just like when we heard the Solar Impulse first time, it was just such an amazing story. And now we're talking to one who has a great experience in this field. Like, can you tell us about your role there in the Solar Impulse team?
Yes, and first I just want to pull up a photo of this airplane because it is sometimes, you know, if you don't know exactly what Solar Impulse is, it is it's a very different looking airplane. So you can see this airplane now, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so this is a picture of Solar Impulse, and it's a picture taken above the airplane, so you can see that the solar cells are lining the 72-meter wings. So a lot of times whenever I tell people that I worked on a solar-powered airplane that flew around the world and carried one person, they think it's going to be this tiny little airplane, but really, and you can even see that's me right there, kind of wearing the yellow vest, the closest person to the camera, but it took 4 people to make sure that these wings were stabilized. So I wanted to share a quick picture just to give everyone a perspective of what this airplane looked like. All right, and I will stop sharing now. Okay, so yeah, so my role on Solar Impulse, I was working with the company Covestro, which was a material supplier, and they supplied lightweight materials for the airplane. A lot of different areas, but mainly in the cockpit, used for insulation to help keep a comfortable environment for the pilots that were going to be up at about 85,000 meters in the air, which can get pretty chilly. So I was then sent to be an embedded electrical engineer on this project. And as an embedded electrical engineer, I was still working for Covestro, but was able to lend my skills as an engineer to the ground crew of the team. So there were about 16, 17 of us on the ground crew, and we were in charge of everything to do with the handling of the airplane. So it was a cool experience because it was really totally raw problem solving. There was not a value chain for creating, not a value chain. There wasn't a roadmap. There wasn't really anything on how to create and operate a solar powered airplane. So a lot of the things we had to do was build up that whole ecosystem for how to create create and also enable this airplane to fly around the world. And that was a great experience. One of the things I do want to highlight that was a cool job, but not necessarily technical, was one of my responsibilities was to catch the wing of this solar powered airplane as it landed to make sure it was stable and didn't fall from side to side. So that sounds like a completely ridiculous or goofy task, but as you saw, the wings are huge. And just imagine a gust of wind picking up, one side of the plane, and with the solar cells on the wings, you couldn't have the other side falling. So I had to stand on the side of the runway and run and grab onto one of these bars that hung off the wing to make sure that the plane was stable and landed properly. So it was a crazy experience, but an experience that really taught me a lot and really pushed the boundaries for what I believed was possible with my career and also with technology.
And can you tell us about this ecosystem with Solar Impulse? Making decision. How was that?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, there was no roadmap for making any of these decisions. So Solar Impulse, again, was an airplane. And I had mentioned that it sat only one person, and it went about 75 kilometers an hour on average. So when you're thinking, okay, this airplane can travel one person about the speed that a car would drive on a highway or something, how does this really make sense? And so again, as I was talking before, when you're looking at making these decisions, you can't make a decision looking at only disrupting one type of industry like the aviation industry. So one of the questions I was asked all the time is, again, how does this make sense? And the mission of Solar Impulse wasn't necessarily to revolutionize the avionics industry. It was to push the boundaries for what is possible for collaboration and alternative energy. So Solar Impulse pulled together a lot of different partners like my company, Covestro, and many others that had a stake in creating a more sustainable world. And by pushing the boundaries and trying to set these new specifications, again, for what solar energy can do, they were able to disrupt the ecosystem and disrupt kind of the status quo for what certain technologies can do, therefore, I guess, reestablishing the limits or the boundaries of what we think is possible. So again, the whole mission, to rephrase that maybe more concisely, will be just to get people to think, like, what else can we be doing? A lot of people had said this stuff is impossible. There's no way that you can fly day and night around the world only using the power of the sun. But again, through collaboration, we were able to do it. So yeah, it was a really amazing experience.
It sounds like amazing. And actually, it sounds amazing, and project went very well, and we know the result, but I'm sure it was challenging. Can you tell us a little bit more about challenges?
Yeah, so I think the challenges really came into play again with some of this decision making. So since none of this had been done before and we were creating our own roadmap, many of the challenges came on the engineering side where things would pop up and we had to make a decision on the fly. So I remember even just some of my roles as a member of the ground crew. I was just starting off my career. I had just only a little under a year before I was still in college. And I remember thinking in these moments where I had to make a split-second decision, like I kept thinking, okay, are we sure that I'm ready for this? Are we sure that I'm the one that's going to be able to do this? But I realized, when you're working on something like this, and especially when the stakes are very high, you can't you can't wait. You can't think, oh, maybe somebody else could do this better. You have to be the one to act, or else, you could have this entire project, millions of dollars, come to an end before our final destination. So I think that some of the challenges that we definitely faced were around those split-second decisions. And one of the areas on the plane that we talked about a lot is that the batteries were kind of a vulnerable aspect because, again, since this industry ecosystem hadn't necessarily been built yet, we were using different components from different industries to make this project happen. So one of the things, after there was a flight from Japan to Hawaii, and it was a 5.5-day flight, the batteries became a bit overheated. And again, that's nothing you could predict because we had never done it before, but some of these things that we were able to take away and the knowledge is now used on the ground. So we called the project a flying laboratory because we were learning things every day that then we were able to transition to technology used in different areas today.
Wow. What was your biggest takeaway? So I'm sure there are a lot of experiences and a lot of takeaways, but I mean, you don't have to say one, but what was the biggest one or more than one for you?
Yeah, so I am just so thankful that I had this experience early on in my career because, as I mentioned before, it shattered all of these boundaries that I thought I had for my career or for technology or just even my personal life. And I think one of the biggest things that I took away is a lot of times, especially when we're making decisions, we have kind of an idea in our mind that like, oh, this is a good decision, this is a bad decision. But a lot of times we don't really take that time to test our hypothesis and examine the industry ecosystem and see like, and really prove why it does make sense or why it doesn't make sense. So I think now in my career, in my life, in really anything, I think a lot about, not necessarily just ruling something out immediately, but thinking through, is this really impossible? Like, how could I make it happen? And I'm thankful for Solar Impulse for kind of removing those boundaries for me.
Thank you for sharing. And it's even excited to hear all those from you. And by the way, then when we were talking about Solar Impulse at the very beginning, you showed us the picture, but so there was a technical issue that we couldn't show the picture on the screen those times. I just checked. Do you mind to show us one more time?
Yes, yeah. All right, let's see.
Before moving to the next topic, we can just because we can enjoy your Solar Impulse experiences.
Yes. Are you okay? So are you able to see this now? Yes. So this is you cannot. Sorry. Oh,
no,
yes,
we
you
can.
No, okay.
It's perfect.
Perfect. Yeah. So so this is Solar Impulse. Like I was talking about, it is this massive airplane, and those are the solar cells you can see on the wings. 72 meters long. The entire plane weighed as much as kind of a traditional SUV, which is amazing, right? Thinking about how huge this airplane is, it's comparable to a Boeing 747, but it weighs as much as an SUV. And I guess while I have the screen up, I have a few other pictures of me working on different aspects of the project that I can click through. But so these are all of my behind the scenes photos working to make this airplane, be able to fly around the world. So here's what I used to do to stand on the side of the runway and get ready to catch this airplane as it landed. And you could see, like, it even looks large from there, but it was crazy how as it came towards you, you realized that feeling, oh my gosh, I need to go grab this wing or else again, there could be an issue if the other wing falls to the ground. So just these great experiences are great to reminisce about, and glad that I had that opportunity.
Looks very, very nice. Yeah. And well, thanks for sharing all those great memories with us. And It's such a great experience. And you were awarded also, right? After being in the project, you received several awards. At least you were listed. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I forgot about that a little bit. Like I
I
forgot to
just
mention.
remember when I saw the pictures, I just recalled that memory.
Yeah, yeah. So this project was a great experience, and I talked a little bit about it pushing me technically and professionally, but it also pushed me a lot socially because I was the only American on the project, and I was also the only female engineer on the ground crew. I was the youngest member of the ground crew. So again, all of these different things really taught me a lot and helped me grow quickly in my career. But this project gave me the great opportunity of making the Forbes 30 Under 30 list in 2017 for energy. And that experience has been great. And I'm so thankful to Forbes for giving me that opportunity because I get to now be a part of this community and learning more and more about other people who are shattering these boundaries throughout different industries. So again, just always keeping me on my toes of what potentials are out there and never think that anything is impossible.
We are so proud of you. All your friends all around the world, all IEEE community, and good job.
Thank you.
Keep up your good work. Thanks.
Thank you.
And well, after Solar Impulse, you actually entered another industry, but from another perspective, from another venue, from different venues, autonomous vehicles, but for the material. So, like, can you just tell us a little bit what you have done after Solar Impulse? After this intense experience, but then because you kept growing in different fields, which is fantastic. So we would like to hear from you what you have done next.
Yeah. So now I think the craziest thing is that so many people were telling me, how on earth can you top this amazing experience right at the beginning of your career? And, you know, I was kind of thinking like, oh, shoot, I hope I'll be able to do something that, you know, can be that I could be equally as passionate about because, you know, I have a long career to go. So I returned back to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and was continuing to work with Covestro. Right at the time, autonomous vehicles started being tested on the streets of Pittsburgh. So, you know, what's cooler than going from solar-powered airplanes to self-driving cars? So the interesting thing is that I've now developed this love for connecting dots between two segments that you didn't think had a line between them. So I was helping build Covestro's North American strategy for materials for autonomous vehicles. And I think the most interesting thing about this is I was asked all the time, like, how on earth does this make sense? What are you doing? Like, why is a material science company looking at these different things? And again, it's all about looking at the ecosystems again and realizing that although you're supplying materials into the automotive industry, you know, you could have disruption happening from different things like self-driving cars or ride sharing or vehicle electrification. So you have to never close your mind to some of these blind spots, and you have to rather know that these trends are out there and then, I guess, find a way that you can still remain relevant and even a leader in these industries.
Well, what did you learn about this experience? You know, this connection between like materials and autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, so again, kind of going back to Solar Impulse and that raw problem solving, I was able to transition my experience there to this new task of building a North American strategy. And I think using that raw problem solving and starting from ground zero and taking a look at global trends, industry trends, and disruptive trends was really the way to, or the key to success. So again, rather than having a hypothesis or an idea and then just going with it, my team and I tested it a lot. So global trends, well, and I guess taking a step back, a piece of advice I have for making sure that you're incorporating the industry ecosystem into the decisions you make are to go through this process of just understanding what's going on in the world. So right now, like the coronavirus pandemic, or things like climate change or aging in place, these are all global trends that are happening. And then you want to make sure whatever you're inventing is going to fit into these segments as we move into the future. And then the next level down, so you start at the global trends and then you go to the industry trends. So for me, I was looking in the automotive industry, but of course people could be in many different industries, alternative energy, and you have to see what's going on in that industry and how can what you're inventing be aligned with those different trends. And then the final piece I would say is looking at some disruptive trends. So my team and I explored a lot of crazy things like, how will wearable devices interact with the automotive industry and then interact with materials, and where is the intersection of where we could have a play. We did the same thing with artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, all of these different things. And those, especially when you're getting to these disruptive trends, is where you're then, making sure you have no blind spots for the thing you're inventing, and then also even more innovative ideas. So I think I learned a lot, again, about just problem solving and never being overwhelmed by a task and building a framework and then sticking to that framework and then coming out with a strong outcome.
Can you give us actually some examples of, analyzing this ecosystem in the automotive industry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a perfect example of this. So when we're talking about the autonomous vehicle industry, I know a lot of times people will, when you have this image of what a self-driving car looks like, a lot of times you think of a sleek interior with a businesswoman or a businessman going to work with a briefcase, or meetings happening in a vehicle. My team and I took a step back, and instead of just assuming that this is going to be the purpose for the vehicles, we started thinking, how do people actually move and for what reasons? And aligning with one of those global trends that I had mentioned before, which is aging in place, where at least in the United States, a lot of this work was based off of trends, very popular now, but a lot of people now are opting to stay in their own homes rather than go to different assisted living facilities. So these people that are staying at home, they might have different needs, or they definitely have different needs for transportation than just a person going to work every day. So thinking about how a vehicle interior specifically could be designed to be able to meet the needs of these different individuals needing to go to work in different ways. And I think if my team and I didn't explore the ecosystem and how these trends aligned with the automotive and autonomous vehicle industry, we could have just been designing a very sleek interior and saying, like, yep, this is what we think the future is, but not have enough evidence to back up exactly why we believe this is true.
Well, this was a new aspect in your career, and how do you think it helped you? After all, it was a new stage.
Yeah, so I think that the thing that I really learned was, again, even though in this role I wasn't just a typical engineer, I was able to pull upon so many different problem-solving skills, and especially ambiguous problem-solving skills that I had gained through Solar Impulse, and then also through my project work in my undergraduate degree. I think that not being overwhelmed, and I guess the best way to explain this is, and I talk to my friends that are still very in technical fields about this, but I remember graduating from college, and whenever I was given an ambiguous problem, I was always asking, how do I know if I'm right though? I did this research, but, how do I know that X plus Y equals Z here? I was looking for an equation, and I was looking to get it 100% correct. But what I realized in this experience working in the autonomous vehicle space is that a lot of the work done in the industry, there's really no correct answer at this moment. Just like Solar Impulse, you could be writing the textbook in the moment. So I think I learned not to question myself so much and to really, make decisions based on evidence and know that even though I don't know if the equation will add up perfectly, I know that everything I did to get to that answer can be backed up with evidence, and I didn't have any blind spots. So yeah, I guess maybe overall some confidence that I know what I'm talking about sometimes. Yeah.
Well, it was a huge experience that just like it was not just luck. You made it. Like you made them all, and like in that period of life, you started you started your career in very excited way, and you gain a lot of experience, and then you decided to go back to school and continue your education in your master's degree, and you have chosen very interesting and very great topic for future. It's like actually future of the technology, which is smart cities.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your decision? How did you decide going back to school after having such an intense experience in the industry?
Yeah, it was a very hard decision to leave Covestro. I had so many great experiences and really felt like I grew so much as a person and an employee there. But one of the things that I really realized is that there are so many hot topics in the tech industry, like artificial intelligence, digitalization, big data, machine learning, and all different organizations around the world are trying to figure out how they can incorporate this technology to maintain relevancy in their industry and then also become, leaders. Like that's the goal for everyone, right? To maintain their position and be able to lead. So I realized that a lot, just like autonomous vehicles, and even solar powered airplanes, when you say these terms, people have an image that comes to mind. So the challenge, though, is that not everybody understands all of those little details it takes to go from that high level image of what the future is going to look like and the incremental steps you need to do to get there. So with Solar Impulse and with the autonomous vehicle industry, I had experience in those sectors, but didn't necessarily have experience creating artificial intelligence applications or some of the other things I mentioned with big data, machine learning. And that's why I decided to go back to school. So I found a great program. It was a Master of Information Systems Management, and Carnegie Mellon University is a well-known tech university in the United States where I was able to get some fundamental business skills and then also be able to do those things like build artificial intelligence programs, program blockchains. And I think whenever you get your hands dirty and you actually do those things, then you're able to figure out strategically how you could implement them into a business. So that was my overall goal. I know it might be a different answer than some people that just were interested in maybe getting a master's, but I think I walked away from the program really meeting those needs I had. I feel like I understand how this stuff can play into business.
Well, I would like to congratulate you. Like in every state, like you made brave decision. You went out of your comfort zone to grow more, and you connect all the dots with different experiences. So while completing your master degree there, so you work at the institute on the smart cities. Like you can just correct me if I'm wrong, but I would like to hear from you that story. And also, like Solar Impulse, autonomous vehicles, materials, and now smart cities. Like you're like with every stage, like you're connecting a lot of dots. How do you feel about that? Like I would like to hear from you. Like it's a lot of connection, and from my point of view, they all support each other. So then you're just making a whole. But I would like to hear this experience from your side, actually, Paige.
Yeah. So when I was going to Carnegie Mellon, I knew that there were so many different opportunities that I would have there to get involved with some cool projects. And actually through a networking or through a conference that I attended in the autonomous vehicle industry, I met the woman who is the executive director of Metro 21, which is Carnegie Mellon's Smart Cities Institute. So when I knew I was going to Carnegie Mellon, I reached out to her, and she was more than happy to have me come on board and be a project assistant for her team. So I think the coolest thing through this process was I learned about I learned that smart cities aren't only about, flying taxis or those amazing cities of the future. Again, when you close your eyes and picture a smart city, we probably all think about, those futuristic movies where things are flying and this and that. So I learned, though, that again, just like solar impulse, autonomous vehicles, and now smart cities, you have to look at the industry ecosystem. So, and you have to start asking yourself, like, what do your customers, and in this case, what do the citizens of a city need in order for a city to be smart? Because some cities, what they're looking for might be flying taxis, but other cities, especially right now during the coronavirus pandemic, they're looking for equal access to broadband. So students or employees that are being asked to telecommute and do online learning, they aren't able to access these types of venues because they don't have access to internet. And I think it's really opened my mind up a lot that smart cities isn't just this futuristic topic, and there are things that you can be doing today in order to make a city smarter for the needs of a citizen. Yeah, and one other thing I do want to say, I also learned, just like I was talking about being a part of the Forbes 30 Under 30 community, I learned new things every day about problems that I didn't even know existed in the world. And I learned a lot about that with smart cities as well. So a perfect example of this is Carnegie Mellon is using artificial intelligence and deep learning to take photos and then analyze those photos to predict landslides. So again, something that I wouldn't necessarily, before this experience, consider part of a smart city, but by taking photos of hillsides and then understanding how susceptible they are to having a landslide, you're able to more proactively make decisions. So again, it's just been a great experience learning about how decision making, again, can be supported by so many of these high technology solutions, but you have to really understand, does this technology make sense for this certain application?
So why understanding industry ecosystem is very important for smart cities?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so, and I really think, again, understanding the ecosystem, and before I had mentioned, in the ecosystem, you'll have the entire value chain, which includes your customers. So who are you serving? And again, you have to make decisions based on a need. You don't want to make a decision just based on an idea. So you have to think, what do my customers need? What do the citizens need? And then figure out how you can use what you're able to provide, what technology you have available, what capabilities the people on your team have. What are you able to do to meet their need? So I think if we only made decisions based on, what our own little team or our department could do, and didn't take into account how we were affecting our customers or how we were affecting the people that we're then supplying or providing a service for, then we're not building a smart future. We're just building a future that we think is smart, not a future that, the entire community can agree is smart.
That's right. Wow. So now you already finished your degree, right? Master degree. So I really wonder to hear from you. What is next?
Yeah, so I cannot believe my master's degree went by so quickly and I learned so much. And yeah, now I'm moving into the next stage of my career where I'll be working with a financial organization. And again, kind of doing this exact same thing. So helping them make decisions based on these ecosystems and identifying which technology makes sense for which areas of the organization. So really pulling upon those skills I gained at Carnegie Mellon and understanding, not just that artificial intelligence is a thing, but how you can implement it and what benefit it could bring. So I'm going to be working to build a lot of business cases and have that evidence behind making these decisions. And then I guess a final part that I really love, I'll be working to help convince groups around the organization to, implement these technologies. So one of the things that I always say from my engineering experience is that you could make the coolest thing in the world, or you could, propose the best idea. But if you're not able to articulate that and convince people that it's amazing, you're not going to go anywhere with that idea, unfortunately. So I'm excited to start this next chapter of my life and see what I'm going to learn in this experience.
We're also excited to hear from you with the new experiences next time. Yeah, that what you have done so far is really amazing, Paige. Congratulations for everything. And I would like to just remind all the audience that this is an interactive session. So I would like to shortly conclude with few questions. Then we will able to get some questions from the audience. You're able to ask some questions on the live chat box and leave your message there. When we move to the question and answer part, we will address your questions to Paige. So like now it's but we still discuss a little bit more, of course. Well, there are lots of things to talk with you, and we can talk in hours and hours. But I would like to just like briefly conclude with a few more questions. I would like to hear advices actually for the people and making the similar decisions, strategic decisions in this industry ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think from that, my advice would be to have that framework in place. So as I mentioned, a lot of times when I'm looking at decisions, I try to evaluate on the global level, the industry level, the disruptive trend level, how is this decision going to affect or interact or be affected by these different trends going on. So that's how I'm able to always take that step back and remember the ecosystem. So don't just operate in my bubble or my silo, take that step back, use a framework and realize just like, any other problems that we solve as engineers, like just break it down into smaller problems. And even though the problem in my experiences have been, helping a solar powered airplane fly around the world, I just was able to go back to those experiences where I battled similar types of challenges and just pull on the information,
How diversity helps, Paige?
Yeah, so I think that's something we hear about a lot is having diverse teams is so important. And one of the pieces of advice that I feel like I have to tell myself or even remind myself a lot is that you can't be afraid to use your voice. So a diverse team isn't only about what the team looks like, on the surface, but about their experiences as well. So everybody is coming on a team with these different experiences, and you have to use your voice to enable this team to be as diverse as possible and get to that best solution. So just an example, I remember early on in my career, a lot of times I would be in teams and I would think an idea would pop to my head when everyone was brainstorming. But I remember kind of shying away and thinking, oh, I'm so new, like they must have thought about that, right? I'm not going to bring that up. But realizing that by me holding back and not sharing those viewpoints, I wasn't helping the team have that diversity and get to that best solution. So yeah, my advice, just don't shy away from sharing your experiences, because you have valuable experiences to share.
Absolutely. Yeah. And your story is really exciting. You had a lot of exciting experiences. What would you advise for those who would like to have similar experiences like you?
Yeah, so I think I'm definitely lucky in the aspect that I somehow never wait to have someone like tap me on the head and say, hey, it's your turn, be a leader, or, get out of your comfort zone. I just have done it on my own a lot. And I think that's a lot because of the support system I have in place with my family and with my friends, with even the IEEE family. I really like to surround myself with people that say, you got this, and support what I'm doing, and don't say, too often at least, like, Paige, you're absolutely ridiculous. So I think that, not waiting for someone to tell you to be a leader is much easier when you have those people around you pushing you forward, because if you would fail at something, they're there to catch you. And an experience that I would just want to highlight for that is I was attending a conference one time, and it was in the autonomous vehicle industry. And I remember looking at the brochure, and there were, a lot of speakers that really all looked very similar. Like, no one was, I felt like no one really looked like me, or there wasn't much diversity in the speakers. And I remember thinking, like, this might be my fault a little bit. Like, I didn't even apply to be a speaker. So I remember I called the conference director for the conference I was attending the following week, and just said, like, hey, did anyone drop out? I want to be a speaker. And he thought I was absolutely crazy. He was just like, who the heck are you? How do I know that you're qualified to be a speaker? But someone did drop out, and he let me be a speaker. So it's so goofy, but I just remember these moments where I think, hey, that looks like a problem. But instead of, being frustrated that it's a problem, I immediately jump into action and think, what can I do to fix this? And I'm kind of glad sometimes I don't think twice about this stuff, because, you might hesitate. But again, I think it all goes back to the support system I had, because I then had to go back to work and tell people, hey, I volunteered to speak at a conference. And I was glad that my team that I was working with supported me, and they said, go for it. So, yeah.
It's important to see all those opportunities, right? I mean, life brings you a lot of opportunity, but you should be the one who sees the opportunities and take the right action right time.
That's exactly true. It's strange because, I think through some of my experiences and the opportunities I had, and wonder, like, would this opportunity have happened if I wouldn't have noticed it was there, right? If I never called the conference director, I ended up speaking at 5 more autonomous vehicle conferences around the country after that. And, I could have then gone my whole career never speaking at an AV conference. And I think, just noticing the opportunities is half of the battle, right? I think that's a great point.
In your story, you have a lot of takeaways from every stage. And, as we said, I mean, life brings you a lot of opportunities that you need to see sometimes. That today we have audiences listening your story. And also a lot of people will watch afterwards, because this video will remain here on the channel. So for people who are watching you, what do you recommend to take away? So, like, what is your advice? What do you hope, let's say, what do you hope the audience to take away from today?
Yeah, so as I mentioned right at the start, Solar Impulse really shattered a lot of those boundaries for what I thought was possible. And that's why I really like to share some of my experiences with other people, just to open up those possibilities for these out-of-the-box solutions. And I would say that I hope people would walk away with a better understanding of how they should always be thinking about the greater picture of how their work will affect their team, department, industry, and that overall ecosystem of the industry. So again, we get bogged down in these details. So make sure that you understand the bigger picture and the bigger purpose, because when you do that, it could also expose some of those blind spots, and you, from your experiences, would be able to say, hold on, wait, maybe there's a better way to do this. And then, so finally, the other piece of this too is really, rather than assuming something will not work, test that hypothesis and prove that it's true or false. Because I think a lot of times, just with some of the different things I did, if I would have assumed, just going off of that last example, if I would have assumed that there is no way that next conference director would let me speak, and I never called them, I would have never known. But I called them and they said yes. So I think, just never assume that something's impossible until you really prove that it's completely impossible. Yeah, so I guess that's my final piece of advice. And I think, I don't know, I just hope that everybody feels, again, comfortable using their voice, and they remember that using your voice in a purposeful way is just so important. And we need everyone's voice out there. So please don't shy away. And I don't know, it will be cool to see what the world looks like in the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Well, exactly. And we are the ones who are inspired by many of those great people, and also inspire and get inspired. So like, I'm sure you inspired a lot of people today.
Oh, thank you.
In many times also, like in many different places. But I'm glad we are just like here together with you, and we had the chance to have you here in this call, and you're inspiring many people today. Oh. It's great to touch people's life, right?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. So like, we're having some questions. Actually, we already have one. Let me try to show on the screen, but can I? Okay. Well, I try to deal with this. Next question. Okay, I'll just try. So I'll just read for you. So okay. The questions from the Denis Salkan Platkan and your page. The success of smart cities and green transportation depends on the hybrid green energy storage, prosumers, and grid operations. Do you see the harmony and enough network on these fields?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it goes back to the collaboration aspect that I mentioned a bit with Solar Impulse, where, I think that there definitely needs to be more cross-industry collaboration in order to achieve some of these hybrid approaches, because really, it doesn't make sense to have an all or nothing mentality, right? You need to have those hybrid approaches in order to help a smooth transition towards those cleaner types of energy for transportation. So I'm not sure if I would be able to give a direct answer on what I've seen in the industry, but I'm just hoping that as we move forward, people, just like my experience again with Solar Impulse, it's so much easier to go farther as a team, right? I know there's a quote where, if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. So I hope that in the future, more companies are seeing how having these collaborative partnerships can really help their business rather than potentially, expose them to issues with competition.
Well, actually, I can ask one more. So where do you see because we're just talking about smart cities, but smart and green cities is another thing. So it's actually smart and sustainable cities. So can you just also tell us about your vision on this?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think one of the things, at least I've noticed from my work in the United States, is that a lot of people are now thinking, you can't implement a solution that is not going to be sustainable as well. So a lot of people, I think, are finally starting to have these mentalities of smart and sustainable, or like smart and green in mind. So I know I'm trying to think of a good example from my work in the Smart Cities Institute, but um, I guess so. I'm not sure if this will be directly the right project example, but through talking with some of the different people at the city of Pittsburgh, I know an idea that came up was um, having, instead of roads that cars drive on or these autonomous vehicles drive on, can they drive on grass instead? And, whenever I first heard this concept, I didn't really understand why that would make sense. But learning and thinking again about the ecosystems, grass is able to have, or in the city of Pittsburgh, this was their thought process behind this, but grass would have better water drainage and help make some different areas again around the city that were problems that I didn't really realize. These, I guess, smart cities that were built with grass roads would then enable other ecosystems rather than just the transportation ecosystem to flourish. So again, that's probably not the best example, but it just reminded me, again, as we're talking ecosystems, when you're thinking of these smart and green cities and thinking of where they overlap, you also want to explore how they overlap and will solve problems for other needs that are just in the overall city ecosystem.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing your point of view for this as well, because it's always a question, like some people really confuse it about both, and sometimes they're using both terms to each other, like then they just, when they say smart city, like they think they're talking about sustainable cities, but and you're an expert on this field, so it's great to hear from you. Thanks for the explaining.
Yeah, well, and I was going to even just add on there that I know sometimes even I can catch myself using terms interchangeably, and then again, I have to take a step back or even just listen to the people around me, and then they explain, no, they're different because of X, Y, and Z. And I think that again, that's why you have to speak up and use your voice, because even someone that has experience in the fields might always or might not always get the answers correct.
Right. Well, actually, we're about to finish this session. It was so fruitful discussion with you and hearing inspiring. Thank you so much, Paige, for sharing your time with us. And we're really happy to be with you today in this ET talk. We learned a lot from you. I'm sure also many people learn a lot and get inspired from your from your advices, from your story.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I really think if there was any positive to kind of being stuck at home and being unable to travel these days, I was glad that we were able to find, a positive in this and connecting and, being able to, get in touch. And thanks for the opportunity to share my story.
Thank you so much. Before we close, I would like to ask you, you're a volunteer. So what would be your advices for also volunteers? IEEE and also other NGOs, but we know you're a great IEEE volunteer. So with all these experiences and great experiences, your professional life, you're also a great volunteer.
Yeah.
So thanks for all the contributions. We are all volunteers, and I'm very happy to know you also, thanks to IEEE. So that would be great to hear your advices lastly for the volunteers.
Yeah, I think some of the advice for volunteers could be overlapping with other advice that I gave as well about how to seize opportunities. But I still remember whenever I was still in my undergraduate university, I remember seeing gaps that needed to be filled. But, at first you could be a little bit shy and not realize, like, I do have the power to fill those gaps. So I would say, as a volunteer, just always look for gaps and then figure out what skills you have with yourself or on your team that you can use to fill those gaps. And again, not just fill them to fill them, but fill them because of the needs that you've heard from your customers, or in the end, I guess, the IEEE members. Always just do things with a purpose and really understand that purpose behind it.
That's right. Great to hear also this advice from a great volunteer. Thank you so much for everything. And this is Simai again. We are finishing this session, and IEEE Women in Engineering ET Talk by Turkey section. And today we were together with Paige. It was really inspiring. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.